Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Lewis. I am a professional artist, graphic designer, and tarot deck enthusiast. And Sundays is the day that I work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So, welcome to this Sunday's live stream. Now, if you are new here, again, my name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a professional artist. There are a few things I would like for you to do, right? Whether you're new, whether you've been here with me for a while, whether you're watching this live or the replay. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for doing that because I truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it. That gives me the motivation to continue to share the process of creating something that I absolutely love and absolutely care about. So for that, I'm eternally grateful. Now, one of the things that I would like for you to do, if you don't mind, is if you find something valuable in this live stream, go ahead and hit the thumbs up for me. That helps this channel out a whole lot. I used to think that it didn't mean much, but it does. It lets YouTube know that you value this content and you think that other people who like the same things that you like will also value this content. So it helps me out quite a bit. The other thing that you guys can do, I know we're at the top of a new year. Usually at the new year, we get tons and tons of inspiration to start new projects, to start new businesses and things like that. My books are currently open for the first quarter of 2025. So if you have a project in mind that you think that I would be a great fit for, by all means, please visit my website, blewisarts.com. Click on the link that says work with me, which will take you to a little bit of a short survey to tell me a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your project, your goals and things like that, and hopefully I can help you bring those things to light. So without further ado, let's get off into it. Now, again, Sundays is the day that I work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So if you were not here last week what we did was we went through the development of the threes of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now, if you have not checked that out, I do recommend doing that, especially if you're really interested in sort of the nuances of planning cards and sort of project management and that kind of thing. Pretty much what we did was I made a list of all of the suits in the minor arcana cards, right? So that will be the cups, the pentacles, the wands, and the swords. From there, I assigned keywords to each of the suits, right? So we get a broader sense of what the suits themselves represent. Now, within those suits, we have any card from Ace to King. So just like your regular playing card, like your bicycle card decks, we have Ace through King, right? And so each of those cards then have an additional attribute that goes along with the general meanings of the suits. So because we're working on the threes of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, hey PL, hey Black Zetu, I'm so glad to see you both here. How y'all doing? I'm really happy to see you. So, to sort of break things down even further, we looked into the numerology of the number three, what the sort of common themes within the threes of any tarot sort of represent, and then we built on some little bit of thumbnails from there so that we can begin working on the cards, the three specifically of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now, fun fact, I did not continue. I know I mentioned that I might continue working on the thumbnails. Specifically, I think it was the Three of Pentacles. I did not pick that back up, but what I would like to do today is just jump right into creating the cards because we have to get this project completed. I know some of you guys have been with me since the very beginning. And so I want to make sure that you guys have a quality product at the end. And I want to make sure that we don't get sort of stuck and hung up on trying to figure things out. I have a few things that I want to work on so far that we've developed so far that I'm going to make sure that we do that. So today we're going to focus our attention on the Three of Wands. Now, this was one of the two cards that I had a pretty good idea of what it was that I wanted to create for this card. Now, this one in particular is going to build upon our Two of Wands, which was the card that we finished recently, right? So I'll give you guys an idea of what that looks like. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller here for just a moment, just to show you this particular card. And then what I'll do is sort of show you the Cosmic Gateways Tarot and where we are so far in the creation of the deck itself, how the cards look, the vibe of the cards, so you guys can get a good understanding and a good sort of sneak peek of where we're going with this, right? All right, so let me make myself just a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, and I'll show you what we're working with so far. So now, I think the week before last, we completed the Two of Wands. Now, this is important because the Three of Wands is pretty much the next step in this series, not just in number, but in terms of the story in general. In our Two of Wands, we created a scene that sort of mirrored the vibe of the Hierophant card in the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. In this scene, they're in a library and they are planning. Now, there are some personal Easter eggs within this composition. For instance, there's a map of my hometown, Chattanooga, from the year 1900. I just actually found my mom sent me some while ago a newspaper article, and I just refound it where my great grandfather was sort of featured in around this time, right? So that means it has a little bit of significance for me. But the main idea is that these people are planning something, right? And so when you pull this card, it'll sort of signify making plans, doing research, sort of getting ready to make a specific move, right? Now, the Three of Wands is going to build on that story. And it also will kind of coincide with the Knight of Wands in this particular deck. And I'll show you what that looks like. Now, the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords are two cards that I tend to get tangled up, right? So as I'm reading, these two cards are cards that I, for whatever reason, I guess because to me, they have very similar attributes. Knights deal a lot with movement. Now, when I went to design the Knight of Wands, I wanted to sort of lean into the adventure, right? So I'm very much calling on the never ending story. When they meet the Oracle and they get to this, the little boy, gets to this place and he has to pass this final test. That's sort of the vibe that I was going for when it came to the Knight of Wands. But as we have approached the Three of Wands, we're sort of building a slightly similar story. All right, that's important. And it's important for me because although I have completed the Knight of Wands and although I do have this idea that I think works really well, it may be something that I'll have to go and revisit sort of later on, but we'll see how that goes. But we're pretty much telling a very similar story. Now, with the Knight, of course, he has sort of gotten much closer to his movement. He is definitely leaning more into the adventure of his journey, right? Because knights deal a lot with movement. But with the Three of Wands, we're going to sort of come to the discovery of this journey, right? So we're going to sort of tell that story in this sketch. Now, disclaimer, I don't typically draw in front of people, but in the spirit of getting past fears in this brand new year and being bold enough to fail faster so that we can get on past that fear and get on and get some work done. I'm going to show you what I do when I have thumbnails and I move them into our final files. Now, before we get started, I am going to show you guys who are new here a little bit of what the Cosmic Gateways Tarot looks like. Now, again, I started this project in 2019. We started this live series. Oh, is it? There it is. Okay. We started this live series in June of 2024, and it just sort of allows me to show you guys sort of the thought processes, just the creative process of coming up with cards. And I've been working on and off on this project since then, right? Now, the reason that it is taking a long time is because, of course, I am a professional artist. So sometimes, we have to fund the project, right? So a lot of the times I am working on client work and doing things like that. So I'm not able to dedicate as much time to my dream project as I would like. But I think if you have something that you want to do, right, whether it is, you want to learn how to sew or sing or, garden or whatever the case is, you have to deliberately make time to do that. So Sundays is my day to do it, right? So no matter what's going on throughout the week, I have Sunday to focus on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. All right, so let's get back into it. All right, so now that we have gone through the process of creating our thumbnails, which are very much just basic stick figures, what I'm going to be doing is taking these thumbnails and moving them into a new file and drawing sort of on top of that. That's why we really didn't need to have all of the details in the thumbnails. I just needed to have notes and things to remind me of what I was thinking at the time. It's sort of what the overall goal for this project is. So I'm going to make sure that I have the right layer selected. So I'm going to turn this off, and it looks like I do for the first part. Now, with the Three of Wands, we had two somewhat similar ideas, but slightly different setups. And I don't know which one is going to work. So we're going to find that out together today. The first idea was to have our main characters sort of sitting or standing off into the background. He's in the foreground, right? And he's looking in the distance where he sees two obelisks. And I'm going to make a new layer here so I can kind of point to what I'm saying so that you guys can follow me a little bit. All right, so we have our main character who is here, right? And he's sort of standing closer to the foreground, which means that in this card, he's going to be the largest thing in this card, right? In order for us to create distance, everything beyond him is going to be smaller. However, he is going to be holding on to a wand here, right? There is a gateway or portal in the background. There is a monument sort of in this sand dune situation. And next to the portal are two obelisks, and those will represent the two wands or the additional two wands. So there'll be three wands in total. And then in the background, I had the idea of having a pyramid sort of in the back. I don't know if any of this is going to work. Again, this is why we're here. This is why we thumbnail, and we'll sketch it and figure it out. All right. So the second idea was slightly similar, except very much like our base material from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. We have the wands in the foreground with our character, right? So it's pretty much like the very much like the source material, but again, we have our monument and things in the back that's sort of covered in sand. We have our portal, and we have our pyramid. So I don't know, again, which one is going to work. But again, this is why we're here. And before I forget, today is my dad's birthday. So shout out to you, Dad. I don't know if you're watching, but shout out to you. Happy birthday to you. And I hope you have a wonderful day. So let's get into it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I have these two thumbnails on two separate layers. I am going to go ahead and copy the first. And then I am going to move it over to our file, which I already have set up. And then what we'll do is go from there, right? All right, so I'm going to select this using my lasso tool, and just a little bit of housekeeping in case you're curious. I am working in Clip Studio Paint, and I'm working on a Huion tablet. Now, I do enjoy Huion. I think if you're in the market for a tablet, this is a pretty solid option. This is my first thumbnail. I'm just going to move it up to the top, and then I'm going to go back to my other file, my 3 development sheet, and I'm going to copy the other thumbnail, and then we'll kind of go from there and see what works. But I am using Clip Studio Paint, specifically version 1. I just received an email recently when they were doing like the Black Friday sales, and I know they're going up to version 4. So with that comes all kinds of bells and whistles and things like that. I'm working in version 1. It seems to work pretty well for me until it stops. I'll kind of stay here with version 1 of Clip Studio Paint, and we'll just kind of go from there. All right, so this file is set up to be the exact size of my tarot cards, right? Within this, I have some crop lines. These are the sort of lighter lines in the background. This tells me where my border is. So this line, let me show you here. This line tells me where my border for the card is, right? And then everything else represents sort of the bleed or the information that'll be cut off once things get printed. All right, so that's something very important to keep in mind, because when I scale these thumbnails up, some of this might get cut off and we'll have to rearrange and things like that. All right, so we're going to take our first thumbnail, and I'm actually going to duplicate it so that I don't mess up my original layer. I'm going to turn off that original layer, and I'm going to turn off my second thumbnail, and I'm just going to blow this thing up. Now, if I did my job correctly, then I will probably have something roughly the size of my card. So things should pretty much fit in place. But all I'm doing is going to blow this up, and then I'll show you some of the references that I've gathered as I sort of prepared to work on this card. Now, the backstory of this, again, is that our main character is sort of going on an adventure, and it is, again, building on the story of the Two of Wands. So it'll be something very much like this. One thing that I will want to avoid, and now that I've blown this up, I can look at it a little bit better, is that I don't want the vertical wand to be up against my border, because that'll create an effect that'll just be super distracting for the eye. Now, if I did not have a border in this particular deck, then it wouldn't matter, right? But considering that I do have a border, that kind of gives me a little bit of an idea of what I'll need to rearrange and what I'll need to change. But for the time being, I believe it's auto saving, so we'll let it auto save. There we go. And so this is what we're working with, right? Now I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm going to turn this to multiply. I'm going to lower the opacity, meaning how dark it shows up on the screen. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing with our second setup, and I'll see which one of those works better, and we'll build on it. Now, again, just to recap, this is a continuation of our Two of Wands, and I'll show you guys what that looks like here, where our main characters are planning this sort of scene. Now, within the series of steps that the characters go through, through the story of tarot, the Three of Wands is the very next logical step. So where they are planning in the Two of Wands and the Three of Wands, they've sort of made this discovery, and then it plays to the story that I've told in the Knight of Wands, where our Knight of Wands is actually initiating this adventure. He's actually gotten to the point where he's moving toward in a very adventurous way. And the way that I illustrated that was very similar to the scene in Never Ending Story, where I believe it's Atreyu who gets to the final test where he has to meet the oracles. And the oracles were like two sphinxes, and he had to sort of be brave and get on through it. And that's sort of the story that we're telling with the Knight of Wands, right? So this is what our oracles look like. And our knight's pretty small, but he's sort of at this cusp of adventure, right? But before he gets there, our Three of Wands shows up, and that becomes the discovery that there is an adventure to be had, right? All right, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And again, I'm going to duplicate my second option. Turn this one off. I'm going to duplicate my second option, and then I am going to blow it up just the same as I did with the first. And then we're going to see which one of these works better, and then we'll go from there. All right, so on the keyboard, I'm hitting Command T in Apple, and this will be Control T in with a Windows keyboard or in the Windows computer. And that just allows me to transform, blow this up. And then I have my smaller thumbnails that have all of the notes and things that I want to include in this particular scene. And again, I'm seeing that we're running into the very similar problem where I have the vertical wand sort of up against the bar of my border. So what I've done right before this started is I gathered some references because I have an idea of what I want this to look like. I want this to be a somewhat deserty, think Dune, HBO's Dune, or not HBO's Dune, but just think the show Dune or the movie Dune. I am wanting it to have sort of that sort of sandy feeling. I want it to be that he discovers that these monuments are sort of washing up, if you will, even though this is a desert. They're sort of being discovered in this desert, and beyond that is a portal. All right, so here are the references that I've come up with. Pretty much I went to Pexels and I typed in sandy dunes to just sort of get an idea of color palettes, to get an idea of how I wanted it to be. And then from there, I actually put together my own reference by using a couple of the, using this particular guy, right? And so I'm looking at my reference panel. There's a guy standing on the edge of a cliff. I used that guy in one of the, sand desert references in order to sort of put together an idea to start with, right? So I like the idea of this guy standing by himself. I don't want him to be too small. Again, I want it to feel like he's sort of looking out at a distance, and I want our main character to be the sort of main focus of this particular picture, but also what he's looking at, because he's making the discovery that there's something beyond this area that he's coming out of, right? I do like the idea of this particular image where the guy is holding a torch of some sort in this desert, because wands deal with fire. I also like that this is a nighttime scene. I do know that a lot of the cards in the Cosmic Gateways Tarot are pretty dark. I think I might stick with that. I'm not really sure yet. We'll see. That's sort of will come next week when we start doing our flats and things like that. But these are sort of the references that I have pulled from Pexels to give me an idea of color, to give me an idea of the shape of sand dunes, and to sort of inspire me to do a little bit more. And let me see if I have, I'm going to see if I have the reference that I put together, and then we'll start drawing here in just a bit. And if not, then we'll just use our imaginations and go from there. So I hope you guys had a great week this week. It's been a week. The time has been flying by extremely fast for me. So I'm not, I think Sunday snuck up on me. But we're here, and I am very excited because this is one of my favorite things in the world to do. All right, so this is a reference that I pretty much put together. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I didn't really care that he has, you can kind of see where I took this man out of his background. That wasn't really important. What was important is that I liked the fact that he was standing over this dune area or over this sandy area on this cliff. That's very much in line with what we've already drawn. I may actually change his pose, but I just kind of like sort of the setup. Now, this one is a little more in line with the sandy area. So it's as if he's coming out of this forest, but he's not above what's going on. I'm not really sure which one I'd like to go with. I'm leaning towards this particular image, and I think that's where we're going to start. All right, so now I have my thumbnails duplicated. I'm going to turn them down and turn them on multiply. Oh, not multiply. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep them on normal. And by multiply, I mean we'll do, it'll blend sort of with the background, but we don't have a background right now. So that's not super important. All right, so we're going to start with option one. Now, option one had to do with the obelisks in the background being his the wands, right? And then also having this monument in the foreground. Now, none of this is going to be perfect. None of this is meant to be perfect. This is just sort of my jumping off point so that after live, when I, can concentrate a little bit more, I can clean it up. And then next week, we'll have our completed sketch and our completed idea so that we can move on, right? Now, using our reference, I think I'm going to, for this one, because he looks a little more level, I'm going to use this particular reference. And from there, I'm going to just put in a really, really rough idea to start. And then we'll tighten it up as we go. So if I had a guy here, right? Actually, you know what? Let's go blue. We're going to go blue. Let's start this thing in blue. All right, so I'm using a digital pencil, and pretty much this works very much like a regular pencil. And of course, because this is digital art, a lot of this is very easy to move around and manipulate and things like that. Now, this guy, based on this particular pose, it just sort of standing something like this. Now, I don't know that I want to use the pose of this person. I just sort of need to use the idea of him standing sort of out, right? All right. So we have him, we have his feet sort of like this, have the back of his foot here. Now, because I know that I have my border here, I don't necessarily want to put another vertical line right next to this border, right? So what I may do, and what I will probably do, is move, rather than have his staff here on this side, I think I'm going to move it onto his left side, right? The challenge with that is, if I do, then that will sort of block our portal, and it'll block our obelisk. So these things may be shifted to our left. We're just going to play around with it, and we'll see how that goes. So he will have a joint here. He will have a joint here. His shoulders are going to be pretty relaxed, right? We're just going to put in his calves. And then I kind of want him to be holding staff. And this is his wand, okay? This is wand number one. Because he's just discovered that there's a portal in his background as he's sort of on his adventure, right? All right. Now with that, I want him to be standing somewhat flat. He's sort of on this designated area, right? That's separate from this clearing that he's found. So we're just going to put that in just like so. And that's something that we'll take into our second design. But for now, this is where we are, right? All right. Now, because I've moved the wand from his right side to his left side, in this particular idea, and I'll turn it on just to make sure that I'm not telling you wrong, right? In this particular idea, as we revisit our notes, what we have is the portal in the background, right? This sort of doorway in the background here. And then from there, we have two obelisks here that represent the other two wands. And that worked really well when the wand was on his right side. But now that we've moved it over to his left side, let's sort of see whether or not that'll work or how we can get it to work. Maybe we can make them stand somewhat aside. I don't know. We'll see. But what I'm going to do is add this information on a new layer. And although this is in our distance, right? I'm going to make these big so that we know that once he gets to this spot, these are going to be some pretty large structures. Again, this doesn't have to be at all perfect. We'll sort of work and tighten this up as we go. We're really just adding more information to our thumbnail, right? We're adding more information to our thumbnail. And then once I'm sort of okay with where things are and how things are sort of laid out, then we'll go and tighten it up, right? We'll make it look a little bit more uh, nuanced, right? A little bit more polished. All right, so those are our 3 wands. So we have wand number 1, which is our character staff, and then we have wands number 2 and 3, which are our obelisks. Now, in the background, I did have the idea of also having a pyramid, right? I don't know exactly how that's going to look, but let's give it a go. I'm going to switch colors to black so that I can see it a little bit better. And maybe this pyramid floats. I don't know. We can kind of lean a little bit more into the Afrofuturism aspect of this particular deck. Maybe it is something like a Merkaba. We can kind of see the underside of it. And in this case, maybe what I can do is move it up a bit so that the pyramid sort of sits above the doorway, right? Something to that effect. Now, just a disclaimer, it is storming here in Memphis, Tennessee. So if our live stream abruptly ends, then I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I'll see you next week. But hopefully we won't have that problem. Hopefully we won't have the issue, but it is cutting up. All right. So we have our pyramid floating above, and then I kind of want this doorway to be. Now, the way that I'm envisioning this doorway is this actually will just be sort of a glowing line, right? So it'll sort of look like a portal, but it'll glow a little bit. I don't know if I want it to be arched. I don't know. You know what? I don't think I like it. Because what I could do is I can mirror our pyramid, and maybe this is a triangle portal, right? Maybe we go that route. Maybe it's a circle. I don't know. But the triangle will hold significance because the upright triangle is a fire. It's the symbol for fire in alchemy, and wands are a fire sign. All right. So something like this, right? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. So we have our pyramid in the background. We have our obelisks that sort of meet this doorway, right? As to say, there's something important here, right? And then what I wanted to do and sort of lean into was the fact that before he even gets there, he's starting to discover these monuments that have been lost in time, right? So that leans for me. Oh, PL says I hear just a little static. Okay, I'm hoping that you guys can hear me okay. Again, like it's storming, so so I'm hoping that everything comes through. But thank you so much, PL. Let me make sure that my connection is in real good. Can you hear me okay now? I don't know how long ago you sent that message. I was all in in concentration, but I hope you guys can hear me okay. All right. So the idea here is that he's making this discovery because again, this leans into the story that I heard watching Benny the Polyglot interview a Nubian man who had experienced his sort of culture be divided. The monuments that his ancestors spoke about or they could see and had access to be flooded by the Nile. Very similar again to your Lake Lanier story, and this happened a lot in the United States specifically. But learning that happened in the Nile region was super interesting to me because sometimes, as Americans, we sort of lose a view of what's going on in other parts of the world. And so to hear that story mirror some of the stories that we hear here in the States was super interesting. So this sort of leans into that, right? So that is to say that maybe at some point this portal was flooded. Maybe at some point there were these monuments that were in this path to this portal. Maybe at some point they were a lot bigger or whole or whatever the case was. But now this area is dried up. Now this area is sandy and dune, like covered in dunes. Now we can kind of see what's going on and see some of the things that are emerging from this situation, right? That is the story that we're going with. Now, again, our portal and things like that are in the background. So what I am going to do again is make a new layer so that if I don't like this, I can sort of manipulate layers separately. But what's happening is right in here, we need some information, right? Because our main character is off to the right. Our pyramid and portal and all of that stuff is at the top of our page. But to create some balance, what I will do is I'm going to represent this with a box, right? Because I don't know yet what this monument will be. I just know that we'll see it, right? We'll see it, and not only will we see it, but we'll see it somewhat buried in this Dooney area, right? And within our path, we have other dunes, very much like our reference, right? And he's sort of coming up on this area. And nobody's seen these things in a lot of years, right? And again, this builds on our Knight of Wands. And what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to label some things because now I'm getting a little tangled up. So we're going to do wands. This is our character. And all of this is taking place in the layers tab. So that is the area right above my head. That is the layers. Anytime that I go to add something new to a picture, if it is something that I want to manipulate, maybe I'm not really sure that I can. I do a new layer, right? And so that allows me to make changes without interrupting what I've already done. So if you are into digital artwork, don't be afraid to use layers. I know there are people who are super comfortable, painting on one layer and solid layer. If that's you, that's awesome. For me, it's not. And I've been in this space for a really, really long time. And I'm just real comfortable with having layers. Now, what I will do as time progresses, if I feel like I don't need to make any more adjustments to individual aspects of the image, I'll join the layers together just to sort of clean up my file and make things a little bit neater. But we are working in the layers panel. And again, that is right above my head in the box, just above, right below the sort of pencil menu. Those are my layers. All right. All right. So I'm going to label this sand and monument so that I know that that is the sand sort of dunes and the monument. And then this is going to be pyramid and portal. All right, and then of course this is my thumbnail, and I'm going to call him thumbnail 1 or first idea. All right, now again, we're just sort of fleshing out what we've already sort of built on from our thumbnailing process. And from here, what I can do is I think what I can do one of two things. I can continue to tighten this up and to continue to work on it and to continue to sort of see where it goes. Or before I spend too much time doing that, what I can do is explore the same option in our second design. And because we've already sort of laid out this particular base situation, I can use this same information without having to redraw everything and move things around just to see if it works. So what I'm going to do is, even though I know that I just labeled all of that, even though I know I just did that, what I'm going to do is merge all of that together. I think so. I think I'm going to merge all of that. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate different aspects, right? So I know my character needs to be duplicated because I'm going to be using the same character. I'm going to be using him pretty much the same that he is currently. We'll do that. All right. The next thing I want to do is I don't need the wand, so I don't need to duplicate that. Right. All right. So I don't need that. I am going to duplicate the pyramid and portal. And I'm going to drag that up near my character design for the second go round. And then what I'm going to do, what else do I need? I think maybe the sand and monument. We'll duplicate that as well. And then everything else we're going to group together in a folder. I'm going to turn that stuff off. And then we're going to work on the second design and kind of see which one I think works better. Now, so far, I really think it's a cool idea to have the obelisk in the background, maybe the pyramid at the top. I don't know yet if I'm sold on it. It does give me a little bit of information sort of at the top of the page, but we'll also have numbers up there as well. So I'm not entirely sure or sold on the fact of having that pyramid there. But again, this is where we sort of play in figure it out, right? And you guys are getting a chance to see that live and in person. All right. So what I'm going to do is I just duplicated all of the elements from this first design into just duplicate it again so that I can manipulate and change those things. What I'm going to do from there is I'm going to group together all of my old the original sort of sketch ideas into a folder. I'm going to call it sketch one, and then that'll allow me to turn it off, right? All right, so I can turn off the things that I don't necessarily need. All right, now in this particular case, the idea, and I'm going to bring up our other thumbnail, the idea was to have um, the wands be much more foreground, much more in the foreground, right? So very much like our first original source material, they had the wands are in the foreground, and then he's sort of looking out into this distance. Now, I do again want to sort of take a little bit of a step back from the original, but this will be the closest to the original design that we're going to get in these two particular choices that we have, right? And I'll pull that up really quickly so that we can look at that, and then we can continue to work on what we have. Because so far I do know that I like how we have our characters situated, right? Now everything else is where we have to figure out what to do. All right, so we have our character. Now, in this case, I do want him to feel like he's in a much more elevated space. So you know what? I think what I'm going to do, instead of keeping these old elements, I think I am going to change it up just a little bit so that it reflects a little bit more of him being sort of on top and then he's looking down, right? So I do have again a reference, and we're going to cycle right back through our references where our character is sort of elevated and then he's looking down into this area where he's discovering this portal, right? So that's sort of where I want to lean into. I do want to keep him the same. I do want to make sure that we have our wands in the foreground so it looks more like he's sort of emerging from a forest. And then from there, we'll work in our portal and we'll work in our monument to make sure that our composition isn't too crowded. And then we got to make a decision of which one to go with because from there, we'll develop it a little bit more and then we'll finish drawing. Now, whether or not we finish drawing today on live, I'm not really sure yet, but we will see. All right. So now, more in line with this particular reference, what I'm going to do is we have our character. I'm going to make a new layer. And then what I'm going to do is actually lay in, turn this down. And I'm going to lay in my background, right? So in this case, it looks like things are sort of laid out like this, right? And there are some things going on in the background. And of course, he has all of his sand dunes, and they get bigger as you get closer to our character, and they sort of swoop and do things like that. So we creating a little bit of distance, right? So herein lies the difference now between our first design and our second. So now we have this distance, right? Now, beyond this distance in our reference, we do actually have a horizon line, which I can use. It's going to create even more distance for us to kind of lean into. And I like that a lot. I even like the fact that we have the sun in our background, right? So we have the sun sort of peeking out like this. Now, this is our background. We have our dunes. We have sort of this flattened area. And within that flattened area, now we can create even more distance for our portal and for our pyramid. Whereas with our original design, everything was pretty close, right? But because we have introduced this horizon line, we've sort of set him up above what's happening below him, right? Now we can play a little bit more with background imagery. Now, instead of having a pyramid sort of floating, and we still can do that. We still can do that. What I could probably do is introduce that pyramid, something like this, right? On this horizon line. And then within that pyramid, we can introduce our portal. And again, the way that this will be illustrated is this all of this will glow a bit, right? Maybe it's a triangle, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a circle, I don't know. It'll be something like that. But we can sort of force a little bit of distance, right? Now, leading up to this, we can also add, actually, I don't like this, so I'm going to take this out just for now. But in addition to this, we can also add we can actually play a little bit more with the obelisk being the other wands. But the original idea was to have him holding on to the wand and then having two more sort of in the foreground. And these would be very much like our original source material. He's got these three wands, kind of like a forested area. Maybe they're taller, right? And that's going to push our pyramid back even further. Like these are taller, so they're like, bamboo. Like so. And we're just going to keep everything super loose. So these are our three wands, right? All right. Actually, you know what? I should have did that on a separate layer. So I'm going to backtrack so that if I decide to use the obelisk idea in this, I can do it on a separate layer. All right. So again, we got our wands, our sort of bamboo poles. As he's coming out of this forested area. Very similar to my strength card. If you guys are familiar with that, that is the little girl who is coming out with her fox demon, and that she has sort of conquered and learned to work with. She is also emerging from a forest. And it's the same idea here, right? But we want to use these sort of bamboo poles as an indication that he's emerging from a very different environment. So he might have some things like this going on, some bushes and stuff like that on the ground. Nothing super serious right now, right? But beyond that, he's sort of come across this sort of deserty area, right? So I'm going to label this wands idea 1. And then we're going to turn that off. And then we're going to explore something slightly different. Now, with the same idea of having the pyramid in the background, I can also sort of lean into having the obelisk again, because that was our initial idea for the first thumbnail. So we can play around with that here and see which one we like. So far, I kind of like the forest area because it does give separation. And I think it'll give us a much more fully rendered image, right? So it's very similar to our Two of Wands. And for you guys who are just joining me, I'll show you that just again really quickly. So with our Two of Wands, we have a fully developed image, right? There's a lot going on, but it's completed, right? Not all cards have to be that way. I know that my Knight of Wands has a lot of sort of white space in it, and a few cards are like that. But in this particular case, if we go with the idea of having the wands be sort of this forest, and I add the monuments and things like that in the background as he sort of comes to them, then we get the same very rendered image, right? Or something similar. So I do like this idea. What I'm going to do though is we're going to play with the obelisk idea, and I'm hoping I'm spelling this right. If not, it's okay. I know what I mean. And keep going. All right. So now that we have our background or our pyramid sort of in the background, maybe this is our portal. I don't know yet. What we can also do is sort of introduce the other wands as obelisks. Now, even though these are very tall, in order for us to create distance with them, I'm going to make them somewhat slim, right? I'm going to make them somewhat slim so that they don't compete so much with what's going on in our foreground. But we do have these sort of two obelisks, something like that, right? And maybe we even introduce our portal above our pyramid, such as this. And then we have this glow, right? We have our sun as well. I don't know. We'll see. All right. In addition to this, we do want to put in our monuments. And again, I'm just going to signify these. I'm spelling it wrong. It's boxes for now, but I am going to change the color just so I can kind of see it. We'll change it to red. And sort of leading up to this, he'll kind of start to come across things in the sand, right? Something like this. Maybe as he gets closer, they'll start to kind of pop up a little bit. And then as we get to this area, because there's a dune here, he's really starting to see these heads or sphinxes or whatever we decide this is going to be pop up in the sand, such as this. Maybe even sees like a step pyramid or the beginnings of one. And again, this is going to be covered in sand, like so. All right. So I like this idea. I think it works pretty okay. I do, like I said, do really like the idea of the wand sort of in the foreground. It does lean a little bit more into the original idea, but that's sort of where we are now. Because I still have a few decisions to make and a lot of things to think out loud, I am going to cut this particular live stream short. It is again storming really, really heavily right now, so just so I don't lose my progress or anything that like that, I am going to cut this particular live stream short. So if you are watching this live or if you're watching the replay, first of all, I want to say thank you so much, because you could be doing anything this Sunday afternoon or whenever you're watching this, and you decide to watch this with me or hang out with me for this Sunday as we sort of piddle around and build on the thumbnails that we worked on last week. Next week, I'm going to have this completed, the sketch that is. I'm going to have this sketch completed so that when we come back Sunday, we'll start to build the vibe, we'll start to put in colors, and we'll start to sort of create this scene together. And of course, it'll be our regular hour-long live stream. So again, if you're here watching this live or the replay, thank you so much. If you would like to support me in any way possible, the best, freest, and fastest, easiest way for you to do that is to hit the thumbs up. That helps me out so much. Like, I swear to goodness. It does, because this video will pop up to people who like the same stuff that you like. So if you like this, hit the thumbs up with me for me. Please don't be stingy with that. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up. But now, more importantly, if you are in the market for starting a new project this year, my books are currently open, and they don't stay open for very long because they tend to fill up. But my books are currently open, and I'm booking for the first 3 months of this year. So if you have a project that you think I would be a great fit for, maybe you have an idea that you want to explore, please be sure to let me know. Please be sure to let me know. You can go to my website, blewisarts.com, click on the link that says work with me, and just fill out the short survey. And I'm usually really quick about getting back to you, because I would love to hear more about yourself. I'd love to hear more about your project and what you have going on. So please do that for me. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys next week. I hope you have a happy, prosperous, and creative week. And I'm going to sit the storm out and work on this a little bit more while I can. So again, thank you so much. And until next time, peace.